Today is Thursday, and that of course means we're back in nutrition educator Lynn Matava's kitchen. This morning, she tells us all about the different kind of root vegetables. Check it out.
Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite fall dishes, which is roasted root vegetables. The best thing about this dish is you could just use one or two of this and one or two of that, and you've got a really hearty dish that brings out all my favorite flavors of fall. So what I have for you today is I have a couple beets, I've got some turnips, I've got a rutabaga, which is related to the turnip, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. And I've got sweet potatoes, carrots, parsnips, onions. I even have a couple like random blue and red potatoes I found in the bottom of my bin. So we're going to throw all them together and make this really great fall dish. So to get started, basically you just pick whatever are your favorites. I kind of like them in these big rustic pieces all chopped up. So maybe a little bit smaller than that, but I like these big pieces that are just kind of big, beautiful pieces so that when they roast, they're still, they're all kind of like beautiful on your plate and it's not really mushy or anything like that. I've got a beet here already peeled. We're gonna use that. Kind of throwing the really colorful things on first so you can get an idea. If the beets, while we're on the topic of beets, if they come with greens that are nice and fresh, these are great to slice up thin, and you could saute them quickly and add them in at the end. You can always also just toss these into a salad if they're young enough, but that's a real tasty thing too if you like the flavor of beets. I've got a parsnip here I've already peeled. Parsnips are hands down my favorite cold weather vegetable. They're a root vegetable. They're related to carrots and parsley. They're really high in things like vitamin C, and if they've been through a winter frost, which is why you might not be able to find tons of them yet, they aren't quite growing, they aren't quite harvested here locally yet, but they are coming from other places that are up north. But once they've been through a winter frost, they get nice and sweet, and they just have this great flavor when they're roasted. I just love roasting them on their own with olive oil and a little bit of salt. My husband will sometimes drizzle a little honey on them when he cooks them. But just a really great flavor that pairs well with all kinds of food. It's really great with meats and things like that. We've got a sweet potato. It's already been washed, and I'm not going to bother to peel these. I like the skin. Of course, you can peel them if you like to. Turnips, here on the Eastern Shore, a lot of people eat the turnip greens. You can eat these turnips cooked. You can actually eat them raw. You can dice them and, saute them. Sometimes people mix them with potatoes and eat them that way, either mashed or just kind of diced. And you can see some of these are starting to bleed. The colors are bleeding together. It's okay. Once they get roasting in the oven, they're all going to be sharing together anyway. Got my pretty blue potato here. Amazing colors. It came from one of the local farms. And these are kind of pretty young potatoes. So again, I'm leaving the skins on. If a vegetable is on the young side, even younger carrots, especially if they're from local places, local sources, the parsnips, if they were a little bit younger, these are pretty large. I would tend to leave the skins on. Things like the beets I don't, because they have a lot of soil collected around them, and I've scrubbed them really well, but I still peel them. And lastly, we've got, well, not lastly, but close to last, we've got this rutabaga here. And I saved this for last just so I could talk about it a little. It's a kind of intimidating vegetable. Sometimes they're the size of, a head of cabbage or something, and they're often coated in this paraffin wax, which is done commercially to keep them from drying out. So the first thing I did was run this under some very warm water with a vegetable brush and scrubbed it really well. Then I took paper towel and kind of dried it off to wipe as much of that wax as possible. And then I'm going to make sure when I'm preparing this that I'm not eating any of this outside peel. And you could use the knife to cut it off, which would be a little faster. If you want to save more of the root, you could certainly do what I was doing before with the peeler. And it's got this nice bright yellow color in it. What's really cool about rutabaga, you can eat these raw, so it'd be really cool to make into a slaw, or you could even just, my mother likes to cut these into strips and she'll sneak them onto veggie trays. And people always wonder what that, interesting tasting crunchy food is when they're on the veggie trays. It's just a cool thing to throw in there. But they're really great mashed. They don't get gluey the way potatoes do. They're great in soups. They're even great made into oven fries, which maybe we'll have to do some of those things down the road with these as we cook together over the winter. But just really fun, kind of underappreciated food, really high in vitamin C, and all these foods are high in fiber and all the phytonutrients and things you can see from all the pigments. And then I have an onion here, and I'm throwing that in. You could pick and choose. You don't have to use all these things, but I just love this because it's so many different hearty vegetables, and you only need a couple of each one. It's all rough cut, so there's not a lot of work involved in getting this together. And then all that needs to happen now to get this in the oven, you could salt this and pepper it a little to taste. And then I'm going to put a very liberal amount of balsamic vinegar. And when I say a liberal amount, I'm probably going to, when I'm all finished here, have about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. Again, this is optional. You could just use a little bit of olive oil or whatever your cooking oil is, but I really, really like how this kind of cooks down and caramelizes and just gives this like a nice rich fall flavor. And then I've got some olive oil here. I did shave a little bit of garlic into it to kind of flavor it right before we started this morning, just to give that a little bit of extra. And I'm probably using about maybe 2 tablespoons for all of this. And then that's all you do. You pop this in the oven, and you have a really great hearty side. It's even a really good vegetable main that you could put over a salad, or maybe with some other sort of vegetable protein. And it's a beautiful Thanksgiving side. So I'm encouraging you today to go out and find some root veggies and get roasted.